Hi everyone. I hope everybody's doing well on the middle path. And I wanted to go over the constellation Carina. I went over it about a year ago and I had done a huge long video about it. I think it was called The Twilight Zone, Alice in Wonderland and Twilight Zone. And it was like a 3 hour video. I thought it was going to be the only video that I needed to do because I thought it was complete and I didn't need to do any others. But anyhow, a year later, I'm still here doing videos, and I'm sure the 3 hour video was not a good idea because who has time to listen to a 3 hour video about Greek mythology and astrology? So I'm gonna go over it again because I've actually got the link to our bodies all about the harvest ship, and it also relates to the ventilators that they're using for COVID. So I want to go through all of this and explain it all to you guys because I'm sure not that many people went through that long video. So originally the Karina ship was called the Argo Navis ship. And you can see there's a whole bunch of faces in the window, and there's also a pyramid, which is actually what I believe is the alchemic symbol for phosphorus. So it all goes back to Jason and the Argonauts, and Hercules was in there, and they were looking for the golden fleece. Now, this ship was actually brought into three pieces. It's the hull, the poopus, called the poop deck, and the velva, which is the sail, the poop deck. No kidding. And the main star is the Canopus, and that is actually the southern pole star. Okay, so the thing about phosphorus is it's actually the morning star. It's actually the Eos phosphorus, which is really Lucifer, which is the evening star. Okay, and it was also created or discovered from urine. And this brand discovered it. And so it's also luminescent, and it actually activates DNA. So it's a white shiny substance. So the shining ones, it's all referencing phosphorus. Now, if I don't know if you guys remember way back in the 2000s, there was this whole thing about urine. Urine troubles Trump, but there was also this whole thing about the Russians about golden showers. Like there's always this reference to urine with Trump, and it makes me think about his golden toilet. Originally in the Orphic cosmogony, Cronus, who was unaging, which is Saturn, the keeper of the golden age, was represented by a silver egg. And then in the Hindu and the Vedic cosmology, it goes to a golden egg. So this is what it looks like on Stellarium, the Carina, and you can see the Pupus deck and the Velva, and then above it there's this little honey pot called the Pyxis, Pyx, I guess it's pronounced, and you have Columbia there, the bird that flies away. So the etymology of Argo is again to the shining, the white, shining bright, but it's also arg, which is in French it's argent is money, which would be silver or gold, right? Again, the silver or gold egg, and to shine is white. It's silver. It's arg, which is for silver. Argent is it's really silver, but in French they use the same word for money. And I found this old ancient pic of Carina, well, when it was the Argo ship, and it's actually a basket being pulled by Sirius, the dog star, right, the wolf. And so I see it as a basket, and that's what my intuition tells me. It's a basket. So we saw people in there. We saw a phosphorus symbol, but the canopus, it goes back to the work and religion. It's like doing the good work is all about for opus, but it's also food, food for the gods. And remember when Hillary Clinton called it the basket of deplorables? Interesting. And oh, look, the 18th tarot card is a ship with the two, a wolf and a hound. It's actually originally not two wolves, a man walking on a tightrope. Yeah, that's the moon card between the two pillars. You walk the rope. Do you go in the ship or not? And it was actually in Hindu text states that the moon is lit and nourished by the sun, and the moon is where the divine nectar of immortality resides. Yeah, so, and of course it relates to Monday is the moon day. Okay, so then we have Chandra is described as a young and beautiful man, two-armed and carrying a club and a lotus, which is ascension, is the lotus. And in Hindu mythology, he is the father of Buddha and the planet Mercury. So now we have Mercury tied into the moon. Remember, I explained that Mercury is really the man, but it relates to the moon pillar. That's where Mercury has to transmute. It's not a male. It's actually female, and Venus is actually female, but it's fire, so it's male. See, there has to be like this is where you get the hermaphrodite. It's like Hermes is Mercury, and Aphrodite is Venus. So here it's also saying the moon is the shining. So they're collecting the nectar for the gods on the moon. It's called the shining, and the shining is the phosphorus, which is relating to Venus and the morning star and the evening star, which is Lucifer. Okay, so see how it's all kind of blends in together, but it's always about the phosphorus. And the reason I understood this alchemy transfer is from this picture. You can see Venus, she's standing on the trigon or the water alchemy symbol, the upside down pyramid, but she's holding fire. Her, the Venus planet is fire, but she represents water. She's standing on water. And then Mercury represents fire, but he's holding the water in the shell of Venus. So there's a transfer between the two, the hermaphrodite. So this would be your bladder and your thymus, or your Venus also represents the third eye. Okay, so you have in the little glass bubble, which is what we're in, and then it all relates to the sun and moon on top. But if you notice, there's a ship. We go back to the ship again. It's the Karina Ship. And the scripture saying that Mount Zion is in the far north, the city of the great king. And it's represented by a little mountain in between the four rivers, Mount Zion. And on the tarot card for the moon again, it's also can be a sin wave. And it's actually called sin in some traditions. Now, Carina actually means the keel of the ship, but it's also a flower that gets fused together by its lower petals, doing with bees. Okay, so the pollinating of bees. So we're back to the bees, the seraphim, and it's also the breast bone for a bird. But here it's explaining that it's more to do with the type of bird, like a flying lizard, birds and bats. So we've got the lizard thing again in there. And it's talking about it. It's enclosed part of the convoluted trachea. And I'm going to get into that because you won't believe the anatomy of the human body also has the carina somewhere, actually in two places. And when you find out where, you're going to freak out. You won't believe it. Okay, so it's also the car. I did the etymology of car. It's a chariot. And it actually means char in French, which means to float. If anybody's watched the 100 show, you go float yourself. It's not a good thing. It means you're getting kicked out of the ship and you're floating back down to the ground. And I was telling somebody about this, and they're like, what about the cairns? It's like these towers, these rock formations, and they're for death. Okay, they're like burial grounds. Also markers, but they can be for death mostly. There's also a town named Carine or Carinare, or not sure of the pronunciation, but it relates to the temple of Tellus, which happens to be Mother Earth. Tellus is Mother Earth. There's a phone company, right, named Tellus? Okay, so yeah, Mother Earth. She is regularly associated with Circe, which is the fertility and agricultural goddess, um, and it's also connecting to Jupiter again. And she was also called Cel, Cel. In French, the Arc de Ciel is a rainbow. So here it is. Here's the connection. Phosphorus was made from urine. It's the shining. It activates DNA. And the Karina Ship is where it's harvested. And guess what? In your vagina, in your bladder area, which is the Vesca Pisces, there's a part anatomy called the Carina of the urethral. Couldn't believe it. Okay, so you know how Kepler was going on about Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions and he called them the trigon? Well, this is the Vesica trigon area. It's the alchemic symbol for water, the V upside, the pyramid upside down, that Trump's always holding his hands like, and so is Angela Merkel. And this, happens to be the whole thing. It's like it's all to do with the womb. And is it representing just the female womb? No, it's the womb of Mother Earth. That's what it all goes back to. The time of the harvest, when it has to do with Saturn and Jupiter and the womb of the Mother Earth and the harvesting that is done on this earth. Humans are the food, the nectar for the gods. It's part of the game. If you don't make it through into the golden age, you don't drink the nectar if you go through, and you are the nectar if you don't go through. There is a passage in the Bible where it says Jesus will squeeze you in the wine press. So the wine is the nectar. In some cases, sometimes it's spoken as the honey. Sometimes it's the apple, the pomela. It's the ambrosia. Has different names, but it's all the same. It's the nectar for the gods. So the trigon is the exact same shape as the ocarina instrument. This is an old instrument, and yeah, it happens to be the same shape as the part of the bladder. Okay, so it's actually 12,000 years old, this instrument, and it means the little goose or the gem's horn. So I want to go into that, what that's all about. And here's an etymology for trig, for like trigon. It means to be smart, trim, hold steady, steadfast. So Trump's grandmother was McLeod, and of course their slogan is hold fast, and McLeod of Lewis is shine, not burn. So there you go. It's all to do with the bladder. Now back to the Carina. It wasn't a gem horn, it's a gate horn. So, and it has to do with the dance, the macabre. It's like the dance, the skeleton dance. So, and it's a pastoral instrument. So priests were using it, but 12,000 years. So yeah, they knew it had to do with death, and it's just interesting that it's called. That's what they named the ship after eventually, and it's the shape of the trigon in the bladder. And it also, the trigon goes back to Jeru, which is all to do with the tree, the oak tree. It's all about the tree of life, being the fruit. You either are the fruit or you eat the fruit, So it's all going back to the tree of life, the whole phosphorus DNA thing. Now it gets better because the Carina is not only in your bladder, it's also in your trachea. And it's a ridge, same as it is in the bladder, that divides the left from the right. Oh my God, I wonder where that's happening. And there's a more up close, more recent picture of what the Carina is in the trachea. Oh, but what a coincidence. The ventilators. There's a company that's called the Carina. Who would have thought? Oh, and what happens when you go on a ventilator? Oh, you go into a coma and you don't come out of it on most cases. Okay, so I want to go into about with Dionysus a bit. The earliest of this occult shows a mature male, bearded and robed. His hands have a fennel staff, and on top of it is a pine cone. So it's a pine cone is your pineal gland, right? The god himself is drawn in a chariot, usually by exotic beasts such as lions and tigers, and sometimes attended by a bearded, drunken Silenus god. Okay, so he also represents the bull. The snake and the phallus are symbols of him. So it's all going back to the snake heals you and everything like that. And yeah, and he carries that pine cone. So that's what I want to talk about. But it's also associated with the fig tree. So we're back to the fig tree, which is like the tree of life again. It's either the oak or the fig. The figs, there's bees that fly into a fig tree. If it goes into the female fig, it flies away, I believe, and then if it goes into the male fig, it dies. Like the fig eats it, or it's vice versa, male or female. But one kills you, and one lets you fly away with your wings. So he's also exhibited as he is the tree. So it's also to do with the wine. He's very much represented by the wine. Now, he also represents possibly women of Iona, and to do with wine again. So I think it's like the seraphim, like these women are what really rule, and they need to have this wine to keep them these gods young. And I think when you ascend, you also need this phosphorus to keep you sustained. And so at this higher state of consciousness. I really do think it's all about that. It's just a big giant game. It just depends on which side of the game you want to be on. And if you do ascend, then you get to keep full memory the next time we play the video game again of being here, which is really just a mirror of all our emotions and all about the two paths. Everything is a constant mirror of the two paths. It's in the language, it's in the science, it's in the religion, it's in the anatomy, it's in the language, it's in the math, it's everywhere. The two paths. It's insane once you start to see it all. Yeah, so he represents the transition from civilized then life back to nature as a means of escape. Okay, so he's all about this, Mother Earth. We go back to nature. We live with nature. We are able to manifest. We're in the Shambhala. We're in the Garden of Eden. That's what Dionysus represents. And he was way before Christianity, but somehow it got, twisted. There was this that he's the opposite of Apollo, um, and it's not. They're the same. They're not two separate, you know, representation. They're really the same, and they tried to twist it just to confuse us. That's basically what they did. Some person in the 1800s. Yeah, so wine is a fiery wine of God's wrath. Okay, so you get squeezed in the grape press if you don't get out of the pillars. If you stay in the emotional duality and you're like always in fear or stressed, you will be squeezed in the wine press. And these jugs that Dionysus represented was they were called amphora, which is like for phosphorus, right? You got the word phosphorus in there, part of the word, and it's for olive oil and wine. Olive oil is your spinal fluid that goes up your back. Kundalini. That's what you have to be able to have the energy go up, and you got to be fluid enough that you can take on this energy. If you're too stiff and rigid, and you're rigid in your thoughts and you're rigid in your emotions, you won't make it. So it's okay if you don't make it, but you're just going to be part of the harvest. Part of the harvest, live in AI lockdown hell for 3.5 years, and lose your soul and lose all your memory until the next time the door opens after 360 lifetimes, which is exactly The division of the great year, which is 25,920, is the great cosmic year, and the average lifetime is 72, so that's 360 lifetimes, the exact, diameter of a circle. He's also connected to foxes. It's called the Bassarus, is in a fox form. It's a cape that he wears. And then that reminded me of the fox constellation with the goose. Now we have the goose is the trigon, right? It's the Carina, so that's in the bladder. And then we have the fox and the goose constellation. So this, it's interesting. And then the mythos is the fox gets drunk. You know, it's part of the sickle. Which is, it's just the mythos in the terminology of the etymology of the words is crazy. It's like it's all going back to the same thing all the time. It goes back to the wine. Yeah, and then they say here even the fox, got tired of running out to trying to get the grapes, and so he walked away. And this is where the term sour grapes comes from. It's to do with the fox, but it's really about ascension. And this is the beetle. There's a beetle named after Dionysus's cloth, and it's a shelled beetle, which is really goes back to Cancer being a beetle. It used to be a beetle before it was a crab, and it has the shell. It has the shield. It's like your shield. It's your golden fleece. So the clever fox is called Valpecula, and it used to be holding a goose. It's not anymore, but it's right next to Lyra, the harp that you need to play so you don't hear the sirens. It's right next to Cygnus, the Northern Cross. That's the cross you want to go on, not the false cross that's in the ship. Because inside the ship, at the bottom, there's a false cross called the Southern Cross, but it's also known as the false cross. So you think you're going to see Jesus in heaven, but guess what? You go on a ship and you get harvested. It's all there. Tell me different, because the rapture was not in the Bible before, and somebody made it up. So floating is not a good thing. You do not want to float. So even the foxfire, which is the firefox that they used on the computers, it's a phosphoric light. That's what it represents. It's to do with fungi and rotting wood, right? Decays and it creates a light. And then Dionysus is also related to the constellation Crater, which is actually a cup that they drank the wine from, okay, when he was in his fox form. What else is here? Yeah, it's all to do with the grapes again, and it's the sour grape thing again. Yeah, it's all there. In Scandinavian mythology, the light of the fox is the aurora borealis, which is coming from Middle Earth. Like, I do think the whole aurora borealis is some phosphorus escaping from the North Pole, and that's why it's always coming out of the North Pole. Isn't this makes sense, right? So it's all there. It's just you have to just open your mind, open your eyes. Okay, so here's Crater in the sky. It's right on Hydra, which I talked about with the owl and everything. And you can see it's I circled right by Virgo's head. That's the Ascension star, Zavijava. And it's right beside that. So you need to drink that wine. Okay, so the goose's name is Anzer. And then I was thinking, oh, it's Meganzer. I used to have these Meganzer birds used to come and visit me all the time in my last home on the river. And they have golden eyes. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right. They're golden eyes. So they're ascended birds. And they also created this plane in the war. It only flew once. Then they never used it again. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's in everywhere. It's like a thread of esoteric knowledge in everything. And all the names and names of ships, they're always referencing the constellations, but we just don't know the constellations. That's why we don't recognize it. So then I found reference to Canopus and the Argo ship to Osiris. So it's saying here that this all relates to Osiris and the dog star Sirius. So this is what it's all about. And then it goes down to the three fates again. So the whole ship is revolving around the three fates. Would they cut the strand or not? This is, yeah, and this one is the fate that cuts the strand. So she decides the length of your life in the ship, Osiris's ship. So here the Hindu legend describes the creation of a pot of Amrita, the nectar of immortality, after the forces of good and evil churn the oceans and the creation. The gods and the demons fight over this pot, and it's called the kum of nectar in order to gain immortality. So, yep, you gotta drink that nectar. And we're talking about immortality in the form of you keep your memory. You get to live the 1,000 years, but you're not like alive forever. You're not trying to be a god. You're just trying to keep your memory so you get to play the game differently when you come back next time. When we all come back, you will be able to be kings and priests, like in the Bible. There's this pilgrimage that they do, and they go bathe in the nectar. It's called the Kumbh Mela. Mela meaning honey. Okay, so it's the honey pot that's on top of the ship, and they celebrated it with Jupiter, like it correlated with Jupiter, but also with Aquarius, which is Enki again. Okay, so which is Saturn. Okay, so they celebrated with Jupiter, but Saturn. So you got your Saturn Jupiter conjunction going on there. It's also when Jupiter is in Leo. Now, it's always when Jupiter is in Leo because Leo represents the sun. It's always to do with the sun and the moon, the two pillars. Okay, the moon is water, but it's earth. It's also, yeah, it's the moon. It's where they collect the nectar, but it's to do with inner earth, the womb of the Mother Earth. And then the sun is the father figure, that creates the energy to activate us. Okay, so there's always this duality, but the to me, Leo, represents more about keeping you as part of the harvest, part of the food, not really ascending you. Oh, I just realized Camilla Harris. It's Mela, it's Camilla, and she's the rabbit, the hare, the Harris. Oh my God, it's weird. Okay, so there's this pillar there called the Allahabad Pillar, and it looks like, what do you guys think it looks like? It looks, well, they have honeysuckle on it and the locust, so it's got the honey. That's all carved into it. It's super old, 4th century. They remodeled it in 1838 and they put a lion on top of it. Now, what does it look like? That's what I thought. That pool represents the nectar of gods. It represents the harvest. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's the fountain of youth. There you go. And it goes all the way back to Hinduism. It's like everybody says it's Egyptian. Well, why do they have a tower with this, pilgrimage that they do for the god's nectar, and it's exact same thing, that's where it comes from. Oh yeah, and they celebrated this on the Maga, and it's always on Capricorn, which is Saturn. Okay, the month of Maga, it's the 11th month, the moon months, and it's the beginning of Capricorn, which happens to be exactly where the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction is on the winter solstice, around Christmas, and the festival of Saturnalia. The symbolism's everywhere, right? So here's Baron sitting on the lion, right? It's to do with the harvest and also to do with the Sphinx because it aligns to the lion, the Regulus star. And there's Melania kind of dressed like Venus. There's cars, so the whole cars is the Karina Ship. And there's Trump holding his hands with the alchemic symbol for, water, which really is to do with the moon and to do with the harvest. It's your bladder. It's like, ah! So the media is even in on it, right? Because they're doing the Twin Towers, the mirrors, when she was doing the reconstruction of the Washington Monument. Okay, so the symbolism's everywhere. It's not really the media is against Trump. They're all in on it, okay? Even Hillary Clinton, she was at his wedding, and, It's all a big show. Okay, so just enjoy the ride, stay calm, take the middle path. So even Trump announced this week about his COVID. He was standing between the two pillars. He had the reflecting pool behind him and the obelisk, the Washington Monument. So the symbolism is always referring back to the symbolism. Okay, so they're really, it's just the greatest show on earth. And there he is between the two pillars with the 33rd number, like for masonry. But this number actually comes from the cycle of the moon. And there's 354 days in a year for the moon cycle, for the moon year. And if you times that by 33, you come to 11,682. If you take the solar year of 365 days and you times it by 32, which is another Freemason number, you get 11,680. So it's off by 2 days, okay? So this is always about the pillars. So when you see the symbol 33, it represents the pillars. It's actually more to do with the moon pillar, so Earth. So he is trying to awaken us to all the symbolism. That's why he's doing it. But you just have to understand what this is all about. This is not about taking down the deep state. This is about our emotional state, our ability to control our emotions, our ability to be able to get through the doorway. That's what this is all about. Here's another link I found to number 33 to do with the sky, and it comes out to leap years and everything, and it's 365 plus 2424 days. Okay, there's this whole cycle. It's complicated, but I was just like, wow, 2424, because that's the days between the two eclipses across the United States, and that's Iusis, which is Jesus, right? So this is a spiritual war. If you want to believe it or not, I'm telling you, believe it. Stay calm. Ariana Grande's new song, To Get Her. It's not to get her, it's to get to her. That's why it's called Moonlight Records, and the whole song is about two Chinese boys that fall in love. It's the twin towers, it's your thymus, it's right to be able to open up your trachea, where the Carina is, and to open up your throat chakra and speak your truth. And that mask that everybody wears, all I see is the Mexican death mask with all the stitching across the lips. That's what I see when people wear that. It's basically they're closing their connection to God when you have that on. That's what it represents. And when I say you want to get to her, you want to get to Mother Earth. You want to get, yes, the moon is part of it. And oh my God, they're harvesting us. Yes, but we all agreed to it. Yes, it's part of the game. Don't freak out that it's terrible. You just need to know that which path you want to be on. Okay? And it's not, oh, there's aliens that they're doing this to us, and oh my God, we need to, it's not about that. It's all about, this is a process. It's been happening for thousands, probably millions of years. It's part of the whole thing, and the phosphorus is needed. It's needed to activate us into higher consciousness. It's needed to create light in the Middle Earth. If there's Shambhalas there, it's what the light comes from. Okay, so it's not to fear it, it's just to understand it, and then, pick your path. Okay, and William Moon dropped, of course, Moon, a great tweet. He said, re-elected with a black hole and reborn like the phoenix from the COVID-19 and all of the negatives. So COVID is, certificate of vaccination ID, I-19 is AI. And then the corona is the ones that ascend from the energy coming into the planet. The other ones will have to get the vaccination and get sick. That's why it has two different names. In my opinion, that's the way I see it. And of course, tarot card number 17, which would be the letter Q, actually is all about the nectar of the gods. So that's no coincidence. And I wanted to, this is great. It's a skit from Donnie and Marie Osmond from 1978. You can't find it on the internet. One of the gematria guys sent it to me, and it was, he had pulled it off the YouTube about 5 years ago, and I guess they scrubbed it because it's so telling about Saturn And he pulls the plug. He pulls the power plug, and he is going to take down the power. And he talks about going back to the birds and the bees and everything. And they do this whole skit about it, and they have this little dance. It's called the what's it called? The dance of destruction, and they're playing a game, and Donnie's moving all the little figures like people, like they're puppets. And it's just so telling. So it's just a short little video. It's 12 minutes long, and it's all to do about Saturn, and they have this whole skit in there. And I just thought it was great. It was what a great find. So I wanted to share that with you guys. And any questions, just let me know. If anybody wants any more readings, I'm finally caught up. My God, it took me a while to catch up, but I finally caught up. And yeah, so it's pretty exciting. And I still have more symbolism that I see, you know, what they're portraying in all the movies and the videos and stuff. And I'm going to share that with you. And I also want to go over the Jason and Argonaut story, because there's lots of, stories relating to the cosmos in that story itself. So if anybody wants to read it ahead of time, you can see if you can catch all the things that I'm going to explain to you. So it's very exciting times. Try to stay out of the chaos. Try just to not be a part of it. Just turn it off and get connected to nature. That's really what we have to do now. And think about life, what would be like without electricity. So signing out. Take care, everyone.
Fools! I warned you. The plot is pulled! Now nothing works. You won't last a Saturnian week.
Hey, what's that sound?
I don't know, but I kind of like it.
Yeah. Citizens of Saturn.
Yes?
You know I finally got it right.
Hey, what are we going to do for power, Newt?
You don't need it. For if the truth be known, the song of a bird, the touch of a hand, and the gentle love of a friend can far outreach all the technology of tomorrow's world.
What?
You're free.
Humbug! These mice are nothing without me. Right, Throne? Wrong, Throne!
May the power shortage be with you.
Glory be, we save the day. Who needs crawl now anyway? Every day's gonna be a beaut. Thanks to Zena, Xander, and Newt. Now we'll live in harmony. Sweet and simple like life should be. Trees and sky and birds and song. Love for each other all day long. No more important for you and me. No more electricity. Not for power that set us free. Are we happy? Hooray!